Hi, this is Poetry 2 video, and I'm going to talk about a quick way to analyze poetry called the Big Six. And like I said, we do not have a whole lot of time to analyze poetry, but just one way that we're going to do it is just to look at these six different factors. And if you look at the directions here, it says how to use the Big Six. You want to read your poem twice. Okay, that should ring a bell. Think about when we do close reading, we want to read our article 2, preferably 3 times. Choose anywhere in the circle and ask questions until you arrive at a comfortable understanding of the poem. Okay, so you can start anywhere after you read it twice. And here's a clue. You must read the poem. Okay, that a lot of people try to do this without really reading the poem. Ideally, you would want to do a close read of the poem, read with your pencil and read it pretty closely. And again, when we're doing poetry, we want to attempt to read it out loud if possible. Of course, we know that's not always going to be possible. Okay, so I'm just going to start at the top. I'm going to make this one the title, okay? Just like in prose, fiction and nonfiction, the title can give us a lot of information. So if I have a poem, I'm just going to give an example here, Annabelle Lee, okay, which is a poem by Edgar Allan Poe. By the way, poems the titles are in quotes, unless they're extremely long, like book length, like Milton's Paradise Lost, then they'll be italicized if we're typing or underlined if we're writing. But usually poems are in quotes at the poem titles. So we know, just like in prose, the poem title is going to give us information. Okay, maybe the main idea, but obviously what it's about. So here we have what words, ideas appear in other places in the poem, okay, that are in the title. Is it a line in the poem? What does it highlight? So for example, if I'm reading this poem, Annabelle Lee, is Annabelle Lee in the poem in other places, okay? If so, what does that highlight? Okay, then you just move on to the next one, the speaker. Okay, what is the speaker like? I want to make clear the speaker is the voice in the poem. It is not necessarily the poet per se. So in Annabelle Lee, it's by Edgar Allan Poe. And we sometimes just assume he is the speaker. Okay, he may be, but we can't always assume that. Okay, so what is the speaker like? What does he or she love, hate, fear, etc.? What is the speaker's attitude toward the subject? Okay, so you go through those questions, answer them, and then just move on to 3. Theme. Okay, we know theme is, the message. What are the big universal ideas addressed in the poem? So when you're talking about theme, the theme is usually stated in one sentence, love conquers all, don't judge a book by its cover. We have the same type of themes in poetry like we have in prose. How are they presented? Think, tone, imagery. So what is the author's attitude toward the subject and the imagery? What types of images do we have? The sensory imagery. And then move on to 4. Tools. What poetic devices are used most frequently? So when we're talking about poetic devices, think of some of these things, and there's more. This is just a short list of poetic devices. This is a starting point. What tools repeat or create a consistent image? Okay, what do you think about? What are the most powerful metaphors? Okay, so what is being compared? Shall I compare thee to a summer day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. So is somebody getting compared to a type of day? Is, an apple being compared to an orange? Is a cat being compared to a dog? Whatever. Figure that out, and then move on to turns. Where are the spots that the poem turns or shifts? What is the tone at the beginning of the poem, the end, where does that change? Okay, so that's an interesting question. Figure that out. And then move on to this last one, 6. Paraphrase. Line by line or stanza by stanza, put the poem in your own words. What big ideas or images stand out? What is the story of the poem? What happens? So the stanza is the block of text. A lot of times I like to number the lines of the poem. Makes it a little bit easier to talk about. So once you've gone over these things, then you want to ask yourself, what do you think's happening? What does the poem really mean? Okay, and again, sometimes that can be difficult. Don't give up. Go back, repeat these steps, and you want to try to, just like a detective, figure out what is happening. And in poetry, that can be kind of interesting. The initial meaning may not just automatically jump out at you. Okay, thanks, and happy poetry reading.